Right, so we'll start with the Hakdama, with the introduction. It's on page 216. The book is Ner Mitzvah Therein, and on 216 it's the Shaar Hayichud and Shaar Hayichud of the Mitteler Rebbe. On page 216 begins the introduction. After the introduction, we'll move on. Before we go into chapter 1, we're going to go into the explanations of Hillel of Paritch, which help to understand the chapters even better. But first, the introduction. Mohus akuntris aloz medaber b'inyan hayichud alikus. The content of this pamphlet, akuntris is a pamphlet. You can see my little pamphlet over here. Is speaking about the concept of the unity of godliness, b'chol prat uprat, in every single detail, b'seder ishtalshlus, of the order of the chain of creation, the eser spheres da'abiyah, of the 10 sephirot of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, the 4 worlds. You don't have to know what they are now, but meaning the entire of creation, all of creation, going all the way up, including the angels and far above the angels, and going all the way to the original statements that with which God created the world, that let there be light, and etc., etc. Like we know, the first one was Bereshis Bar Elikim, was in the beginning Hashem created, was the first one of the statements. V'hu kitzer, and this is a summary, mikol asher yuchal ish, from the extent to which a person is able, lekarev haseichel, to bring his mind close, bahasaga, with an understanding, melubeshes v'nitfeses, that is enclosed in and grasped by, b'meyach v'leiv, the brain and the heart, b'kol parati seder hishtalshelus, in all of the specifics of the order of the chaining down of creation, mitzimtzum harishin, from the initial contraction, meaning from when, we'll go into this more at length, but just in brief, when Hashem contracted his light from being completely infinite, in which case there could be no existence, to contracting it so that there could be existence. At Seif Ilam Asiya, until the very end of the world, the physical world, this world. V'hu hanikra b'shem kuntris hisbeinenus. This is called the pamphlet of hisbeinenus. Sometimes that's loosely translated as contemplation, meditation. As we'll see, we'll just call it hisbeinenus, because it's the Mitteler Rebbe will explain exactly what hisbeinenus is. That many are yearning that this should come into print, because the mistakes have become many in it. With different copies. Back in those days, they didn't have necessarily readily, they didn't have access to printing presses and the like. So, like, for example, when the Tanya came out by the Mitteler Rebbe's father, which is actually, the Mitteler Rebbe was involved in the printing, this was a big deal that they were able to get it to a printing press and to print it out in full. But often the Mamorim were, even if, say, somebody maybe it did hit a printing press at some point, somebody had a copy, but the people didn't have copy machines to make copies, so people would copy it down by hand. Or very often the Mamorim, which were heard verbatim from the Rebbeim, they would be then the chayzim, the human tape recorders, so to speak. They would write it down, and then wherever they would go to, other people would copy it from them, and those people would go back to their own cities, and those people would copy it down, and then somebody else wanted to copy it down from them. So there would be, often they were writing it in shorthand also. So in the different copies, many errors had come up. So this was, putting it in print was a way to be able to oversee that people were getting it without errors. And I trust greatly that it will be received desirably before Hashem. My desirable intention, for the benefit of every person who is searching for God, be'emes, in a truthfully, uvetomim, and earnestly, V'dinuni lizchus, and he will judge me favorably. B'chol asher lo yuchshar be'ini chachamim, in anything that does not is not fitting in the eyes of the wise. K'masher kosov shgias v'chulu, shgias miyavin, who can understand errors. V'Hashem yorim keren Yisrael, and Hashem will raise the horn of Israel. V'yoyir eineim be'ir Hashem, and he will enlighten their eyes with the light of Hashem, eir elam, the light of the world, b'chein, with favor, v'chesed v'rachmim, and kindness and mercy, b'chaya neshama, in the life of the soul, v'chaya guf, in the life of the body, v'yinatlim v'yinasem, and he will take them and raise them up, kol yimei elam, all the days of the world, ad bi'as goyel, until the coming of the Redeemer. So that is the introduction. So we turn now to page Kuf Mem Tes, which would be 297 in the English numbering, and that's going to be up here, and it is on this side over here, Beer Base, the second explanation. Shema Yisrael, Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad. Hear Israel, Havaya is our God, Havaya is one. Uberambam Hilchis Yisei Atera, Perik Aleph Halach Aleph, in Maimonides, in the laws of the foundations of the Torah, in the first chapter, in the first law, it says Yiseda Yiseides, it is the foundation of foundations, V'omad Chachmes, and the pillar of wisdom, Leida Sheyesham Elika, to know that there is a God. V'hu Mamsi Kol Nimtza, and he is the one who made everything that exists. Uva'alocha Zayin, and in the seventh law, it says Elika ze echadu v'cholu, this God is one. V'yidias davar zehu mitzvas aseh, and the knowledge of this thing is a positive commandment. Shenemar Shema Yisrael v'chulu, like it says, hear Israel. That hear Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, is the commandment to know the unity of Hashem, that Hashem is one. Muvan midvarov, so it's understood from his words, from the words of the Rambam, she'inyin shema, that the idea of hearing, eina shmiya bilvad, it is not only hearing ba'izin gashmi, with a physical ear, hakavonahu, but rather the intention is havona, understanding. Shenikra shmiya, which is called hearing. Like if somebody tells you something and you understand what they say, you say, I hear you. Al shem pnimius ha'ezin, that's because of the inner aspect of the ear. Shehu keach haruchnius hamalubash bay, that this is a spiritual power that is enclosed in it, in the ear. Shehu mevin umavchin, that it understands and can choose. Bein teiv l'ra, between good and bad, ubein emes l'davar she'enei emes, and something that is true and not true. Meaning mavchin means he can test, he can tell the difference between. Kamasha Kosov, like it's written, Eisen Milin Tivchan, that the ear can test the words, etc. Ulahavin Mos Inyan Ais Beinanus. So to understand, so first of all, this is the commandment, meaning this is the commandment to do his Beinanus. Right, Shema Yisrael, Hero Israel, is the commandment to do his Beinanus on the unity of Hashem. So Lahavin Mos Inyanais, which this is Shmiya, hearing. Lahavin Mos Inyanais Beinanus, to understand the essence of the concept of his Beinanus. V'loma nikra b'shem his Beinanus, and why is it called his Beinanus? With nun hakefel, with a double nun, right? His Beinanus, two nuns. Shemeira al chayzik hadavar, which emphasizes something. It shows like my friend Label says, it shows the intensity of something. Keyadu lamedaktikim, like it's known to those who are particular in grammar. V'gam lomo toli kol ha'ikar behisbeinenus, V'loi b'hischakmus. Why is the whole main thing, meaning the whole mitzvah, is hinging on hisbaininus, which is a contemplation which comes about from going over, which as we'll see soon, going over details, rather than hischakmus, which is like an intuitive sense. It's a type of contemplation which essentially in the order of the spheres is higher. That it's more so from when you get the point of an idea, when you get the true essence of an idea, that's hischakmus, which is higher, it would seem. And like is understood from the passage above, right? Shema Yisrael, hear Israel. Shetziva mitzvahs liyachdei beloshin Shema, that he commanded the commandment of unifying his name in the language of hearing, Shema, hear. Shehu bechinas havana v'hasaga dafke, that this is specifically an understanding and grasping. V'loi bechinas chachma, and not in a way of chachma. Uve'emes ha-chachma hi l'mayl bechinas bina kayedua. The truth is that chachma is higher than bina, as is known. Now, don't worry about being confused about that, because he will now explain what Chachma is and what Bina is, so that we'll understand why Chachma is higher and what Chachma is and what Bina is, and therefore we can understand the difference between Hischakmus, which is like a meditation or a contemplation in a way of Chachma, and Hisbainanus, which is a way of contemplation and meditation in a way of Bina. So, paragraph 2. So we need to introduce the idea of the three parts of the intellect, shenikra Chabad, which are called Chabad, Chachma, Bina, Das. These are the three parts of the intellect. Just as an aside, even though right now we're talking about the Chabad, the top three spheres, as they refer to the human intellect, how they connect to the human intellect, they're actually in everything. In other words, every rock has a Chachma, Bina, Das. These are the first three of the 10 Sephiros. Every rock and every molecule, and in the upper worlds, every angel and all the levels of angels, etc., etc. And all the created world, everything has 10 Sephiros, and the first of those three are Chachma, Bina, Das. So, for example, you have Chesed, which is the first of the emotional attributes after Chabad, is kindness, right? So, kindness, obviously, by a human being, it's kindness. And even that is on different levels, as we'll see soon. But for example, when you have a fruit that is sweet, that sweetness comes from the kindness, comes from going all the way back up to the angel Michael, the angel Michael, the archangel. What do they call it? Archangel. And so that's how the sweetness comes down. And something bitter comes from Gvura, from strength or judgment. And the same thing with Chabad, with Chachma, Bina, Das. We're going to discuss now the way it is in the intellect, introduce them, but ultimately these Sephiros apply to every single thing in creation. So there are the three parts of the intellect which are called Chabad, Chachma, Bina, Das. Mahim, we have to understand what they are. Hine bechinas Chachma, hu bechinas haskolas etzem ha'inyan, bilti bechinas islabshus b'esis klal. So it is the knowledge of the essence of the thing. So in the case of the mind, it would be an intellectual concept. But it is a knowledge of the essence of the thing without being enclosed in letters at all. And we'll explain that shortly. So that's what Chachma is. Belashon Yiddish, in Yiddish, the leg von Seichel allein hecher von Eisius, how the intellectual concept lies itself higher than letters. Ubechinas Bina, so what's Bina? Hu hislabshus haskolas etzem ha'inyan. This is the enclothing of the knowledge of the essence of the concept or of the thing. Besvara niglis, in a revealed logic, b'vchinas oisius, in a way of letters. So Chachma is the self of the concept. It's the knowledge of the self of the concept, and Bina is the enclothing of the self of the concept into explanations in letters. V'yuvon beis b'chinas hanal. We can understand these two levels by using an allegory. Mihoreia b'dover ma, from seeing a certain thing. Sheyitfeis eisei hadover b'meichei, that he holds this thing that he's looking at in his mind, b'derech klal, in a general fashion, bilvad, only. The ozla yuchel esapel zulasi klal, and he cannot at this point explain. He cannot tell it over to somebody else, to another person, about this thing. Mitzad she'ein lo yishum yediyah be'echusei, he doesn't have any knowledge of its qualities, b'chol chalkei pratim, in all the parts of its specifics. For example, k'sheyabit al binyan mefur, when a person looks at a beautiful building, shemargish tekifu miyad, immediately he feels hape'er, its beauty, b'meichei, in his mind. He feels right away, wow, that's beautiful. Avol tam hape'er, but the reason for its beauty, shehu mitzad ribuy hapratim shebei, that's because of the many details in it. Hamimuzagim b'meziga nechina, that are measured out in a proper measurement. B'teyar, in its form, uvemara, and its look, uvekema, and its height. Eine masik klal, he doesn't understand it all. It's just that first glance. Oh wow, look at that. He sees the beauty of it, but he's not contemplated at all on any of the reasons why is this thing beautiful. And therefore he cannot tell over to somebody else the essence of why this is beautiful. In fact, he can't really explain to him at all. All he can tell somebody, I saw a beautiful building, and say, well, what made it beautiful? Well, I didn't really think about that. Masha'en kain, on the other hand, when he thinks about its when he understands its qualities, b'chol hapratim b'shabei, all of the details that are in it, then automatically he understands the reason of why it's beautiful. Turning the page now to 298. Ribui proti binyonim v'ribui mini gavnin. It has all kinds of. It has many particular structures and many particular shades. That are measured out in proper, in different measurements. Then he can tell somebody about the essence of the idea of this beauty, because he can put it into letters. He's able to enclose it into letters. So even though when he's looking at it and he knows it's beautiful and he sees its beauty, but without the letters, he can't explain its beauty. He doesn't know the reason for its beauty. He can't and he can't convey the beauty of this building to somebody else. On the other hand, once he looks at all the details of the matter, and then he can see why it's beautiful, because the structure is like this, and the colors are like this, and the angles are like this, etc., etc. That now that he has letters, he's able to, of explanation, he's able to give over the beauty to somebody else. On the other hand, with just seeing alone, shehu b'derech klal, that's in a general way, haskolas etzem ha'inyan bilvad, the knowledge of the actual thing itself. This is higher than the level of letters. And therefore he cannot tell it over to somebody else at all. And behold, so now this feeling of and knowledge of the actual beauty itself, this is called Chachma. Achavonas tam hapeir, however, understanding the reason of the beauty, mipnei mahu mefuar kol kach, why is this thing so beautiful? Einei etzem hapeir, that's not the actual beauty itself. V'nase k'melevushi lov, it's like an enclothing to the actual beauty. V'zeu b'chinas bina, and this is bina. V'hinei kol zehu b'chinas chachma ubina b'seichel sheba'asiyah. All of this is the chachma and bina of the of our physical intellect. Val derech ze yuvan gamkein beis b'chinas the chachma ubina sheb'seichel shebemidis. So we can understand also through this the chachma and bina not as they are in the seichel itself, but rather in the intellect itself, but the intellect of the emotions. So he's now introducing he's starting to introduce the fact that all the 10 spheres themselves have 10 spheres. So you have the spheres of the intellect and the spheres of the emotion, and then the bottom sphere of malchus of expression. But within each one of those, there is also there's intellect of intellect, emotion of intellect, expression of intellect. Then within the emotions as well, there is the intellect of the emotions of the emotions, and the expression of the emotions. So the way that Chachma and Bina is in the intellect of the emotions, Shehu inyan hayira b'davar ma, which that is the idea of giving over a lesson in something, of giving over a instruction. And we can understand this from what we found in the Talmud, in the Gemara, in the tractate Beya. But Rav Kana and Rav Ashi, that the two rabbis, Rav Kana and Rav Ashi, shehikshu Rav, that they asked a question on Rav. They asked, what's the difference between an egg that's born on born on a Yom Tov, right? It's talking about in terms of muktzah. That muktzah is when you have something that's a new thing, you can't use it on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to touch it and move it on Yom Tov. So what's the difference between this egg that's not allowed and the calf that was born from the treif mother that the calf is allowed and the egg is not allowed. Shasik Rav was silent. In other words, Rav was the one who he gave the halachic ruling that the calf is okay and the egg is not okay. And when they asked him what's the difference between, in other words, at different times, at this point he was talking about the egg, and they asked him, wait a second, when it came to the calf, that's not the way you said, and he was silent. He didn't answer them. V'afal pikein, even so, lo yeheda lahem v'lo ychazir meiraseh. He did not admit to them, and he did not go back from his directive, from his ruling. So why didn't he answer them? Because the knowledge of this ruling, of this law, it was felt by him in his mind in a way of seeing, in a way of Chachma. Right? As you remember, Chachma is the self of the idea. So he knew for sure, for a fact, that this ruling was correct. Bilvad, alone. L'maylim b'chinas eisius, higher than the level of letters. Therefore he couldn't answer them. He couldn't give them the logical explanation because it was sitting by him higher than a level of letters, higher than explanation. He understood this in a chachma way, in a way of seeing, not in a way of hearing yet. Masha Ein Kain, on the other hand, Rabbi Bar Nachmani, another Rabbi Bar Nachmani, Now that he understood this ruling of Rav b'meach binasai in his Bina brain, right? He understood it with its explanations and letters. Therefore, he answered the question. He was able to answer why Rav was in fact right. That this is what he said, that this one is ready by its mother, meaning that a calf is already a fully developed being at the time it came out, and whereas an egg is not, an egg is a new being, and therefore there was in fact a difference between a calf and an egg, and this is why Rav had a different ruling on one and the other. However, Rav himself, he knew this was the truth. He knew this to be, but he did not have it in a Bina way. He had it only in a Chachma way, right? He only had it in the way of seeing, but not in the way of hearing yet. He couldn't explain it, but yet he stuck by his guns. It's sort of like when you see debates sometimes. Sometimes the person who's better at debating, they win the debate, but what difference does it make if they're not telling the truth? So they won the debate because they have a good power of explanation, or they have a good power, a good ability to convince people of something. That doesn't make it the truth. V'svara zeis, and this explanation, this logic, right, that Rabbi Bar Nachmani had, hu levush le'etzem haskala. It's a clothing to the actual intellect itself. V'nikra b'chinas bina, and it's called bina. Machmas shehi l'mayl b'chinas eisius. Jumped a line here. V'lochei nikra chachma, and therefore chachma is called b'chinas ayin legabi bina. It's called a level of a nothingness compared to the bina. Machmas shehi l'mayl b'chinas eisius, because the chachma is higher than letters. Masha enkein bechinas bina. On the other hand, the level of bina, hu bechinas svara niglis. This is a revealed logic. Hamislabeshes beisius, which is enclosed in letters. Ach af al pikein. Even so, nikra chachma bechinas yesh legabi lemayla min chachma. It should be noted that while the chachma is considered a nothing, compared to the like a non-existence compared to the bina, the chachma is considered a something compared to what's higher than the chachma. Like it's written, that the chachma comes out of the nothingness. So if it comes out of the nothingness, it's a something compared to that nothing. And this is the two levels of chachma and bina that we spoke about above.